Imagine an 8-year-old girl, drenched in rain, singing a lullaby no one outside her family should know, while cleaning the windshield of a millionaire's classic Mustang. What if that simple moment wasn't just chance? What if that song was a secret thread connecting lost lives and shattered dreams? This is the story of Emily Hart, a child caught between two worlds, the struggling neighborhood she calls home, and the vast lonely mansion of a man desperate to find his daughter lost to tragedy 7 years ago. How does a little girl survive when everyone around her believes she's gone forever? How does a father fight to reclaim a child who might not even remember him? And what dark forces tried to erase a family only to be undone by a song? As we follow Emily and Colin's journey of heartbreak, hope, and redemption, prepare to question everything you think you know about loss, love, and the invisible scars we carry. If you're ready to hear a story that will pull at your heartstrings and challenge your soul, hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a moment of stories that matter. Let's begin. The morning broke in Clearhaven like it always did, gray, quiet, and tired. Rain clouds gathered over the aging rooftops as chimneys puffed into the chilled air like breath from mouths too weary to speak. In a rust-colored apartment above a shuttered laundromat, an old kettle whistled for a little girl who had already been awake for an hour. Nora Elise Camden, 8 years old, sat cross-legged at the kitchen table, her fingers tracing the chipped edges of a ceramic mug. Her small frame was wrapped in a faded hoodie, 2 sizes too big. A spiral notebook lay open before her, the pages neat and filled with her own careful handwriting grocery lists, medication schedules, loose budget estimates, and scribbled notes like $41 short for Mom's new antibiotics. She didn't call Joan Grandma or foster mom, just Mom. It felt safer that way. Real mothers didn't always stay. Joan Camden, 68, was a retired ER nurse with lungs that crackled when she breathed and joints that groaned before she even stood. Pneumonia had knocked her down 2 weeks ago, and the hospital let her out on oxygen under one condition: strict rest. But rest didn't pay for prescriptions. Rest didn't feed 2 people. That's why Nora was up before dawn with a spray bottle, a squeegee, and a folded map of the best intersections in Clearhaven. She had rules. Only work after school and weekends. Don't get in anyone's car. Never accept rides. Smile, even if they don't look back. Down the street, the coffee shop lights flickered on. The owner, Rosa, would sometimes slip her a free muffin. "You're a soldier, chica," she'd whisper behind the counter. "But even soldiers need to eat." Nora always smiled, but she never told Rosa that she usually saved the muffin for Joan, 15 miles away, in the cloud-draped silence of Rainwood Heights. Colin Hart stirred in a house that echoed when he walked. 3 stories, 6 bedrooms, marble floors polished like mirrors, but all of it felt cold. Colin sat alone at the breakfast counter, not because he didn't have staff, but because he preferred silence over strangers pretending to care. The espresso machine sputtered to life, grinding fresh beans. He didn't even look up. He hadn't shaved in 3 days. The morning paper lay untouched beside his phone. Missed calls, a reminder to attend the board's quarterly meeting, a real estate offer from Dubai. His assistant had texted twice about a foundation event he was expected to sponsor. None of it mattered. Not since Lena died. Not since Emily, his baby girl, died in the same crash 7 years ago. He remembered the twisted metal, the funeral, the casket so small it barely seemed real. He remembered standing in the cemetery while cameras flashed from across the street, journalists whispering, Tragic loss for the tech titan. Then silence. Then darkness. Then years of pretending to function. People thought he moved on because he kept building things. But truth was, Colin Hart had stopped building the day his daughter stopped breathing. Only one thing remained untouched since then: his 1967 Mustang, cherry red and humming like a heartbeat. He'd restored it with Lena the year before the accident. She'd picked the color. Emily's tiny handprint was still on the undercarriage, pressed into the paint the day they finished. That car was the last piece of a life he used to believe in. Every Saturday morning, Peter, his loyal driver of 2 decades, would polish it while humming softly. Colin always watched from the balcony. But this morning, Peter had called in sick. Migraine. He muttered through the phone. So the Mustang sat in the garage, quietly waiting. Colin looked outside. The clouds hung heavy over the hills. A storm was coming. Maybe one worth noticing. In Clear Haven, Nora zipped up her raincoat. Yellow. Faded in some places, but still waterproof. She slid the notebook into a plastic bag and tucked it in her backpack. A granola bar, $2 in coins, and a half-full bottle of dish soap completed her kit. She left a sticky note on the fridge for Joan B., back by 5. Stay warm. Take meds. I love you. She walked down the stairs quietly, careful not to wake their upstairs neighbor who worked night shifts at the meat factory. Her boots splashed into the sidewalk puddles. The rain was soft now, a drizzle, but the sky behind it promised more. She didn't mind. Rain made people stop at red lights longer, and rain made windshields dirty. On the city's east side, Colin's calendar reminder flashed again. Riverside District meeting, 1 p.m. He debated canceling. The Riverside Development Project was his only recent investment that hadn't been about money. Low-income housing near schools, built sustainably. Lena would have loved it, but had rejected it last quarter. Not high margin enough, they said. Still, something pulled him toward the city today. He didn't know why, only that he needed to be somewhere that wasn't here. As his black Aston Martin slid onto the freeway, raindrops began to fall with more weight, heavy, relentless, in Clear Haven. Nora stood at the corner of 4th and Hemlock, watching the line of cars at the light. She stepped forward with Prentice confidence, approached the first car, with a friendly knock on the window, no response. Second car, a shrug and a wave off. Third car. A young mom rolled the window down and handed her $2 before she could even spray. Then she saw, the red Mustang. It was beautiful, old, but strong, like it belonged to someone who didn't follow fashion. Its paint glistened through the mist, droplets dancing down the curves like tears. She tapped gently on the passenger side window. Inside, Colin looked up, and his world would never be the same. The storm had finally arrived. The window rolled down slower than Nora expected. Her fingers clutched the squeegee a little tighter as she offered a quick smile. Rain streaming off the hood of her yellow coat. The man inside didn't speak right away. He simply stared at her. Nora had seen all kinds of reactions before. Annoyance, pity, disgust, occasionally kindness. But this wasn't any of those. The man looked like someone trying to remember a dream he thought was lost. She lifted the bottle and sprayed the windshield anyway, taking long practice strokes with her squeegee. The rain fell harder now, smearing her work before she could even wipe it clean. Still, she kept moving. Wipe, rinse, wipe again. She wasn't just doing this for money. It was a rhythm, a routine, and routines kept her heart steady. Then she began to hum. She didn't know why the song always came out during rain. Maybe because her real mom had sung it on rainy nights when they still lived together. Or maybe it was just stuck in her chest, waiting to be released. The melody wasn't like pop music or the stuff people played on radios. It was slow, gentle, like river water winding its way through a quiet place. Her voice, barely above the storm, followed the notes as if they'd never left her. Inside the car, Colin felt his entire body go still. He wasn't hearing things. The girl's voice was real, her humming unmistakable. It wasn't just any song. It was Riverlight. He had only ever heard one person sing that tune, Lena, cradling their daughter on sleepless nights, swaying in the soft amber glow of their old nursery lamp. She'd written it herself, never recorded it, never shared it. It was theirs. The lullaby wasn't famous. It didn't exist anywhere else. Lena had said, "I want this to be just for her, just for Emily, a melody only her heart will recognize." So how, in the middle of a dirty intersection in a forgotten town, was an 8-year-old girl humming it? He blinked. She wiped the glass clean one last time, stepping back slightly from the car, rain dripping off her sleeves. Her face was flushed pink from the cold, and her braid light brown, with gold strands hung soaked down her back. Colin fumbled for his wallet. His fingers trembled. $100 bill slipped out before he could even count. He rolled down the window farther and held it out. The rain instantly soaked the sleeve of his tailored jacket, but he didn't care. The girl's eyes widened. "Sir, this is—" "Are you sure?" He nodded. "What's your name?" She hesitated, eyes darting between his face and the bill. "Nora," she said softly. "Nora Elise Camden." His heart stopped. Elise. Elise was Lena's middle name, the one she always said she'd give their second child if they ever had one. A name he hadn't spoken out loud in years. Nora Elise. N.E.C. The initials Lena once wrote on the back of an old grocery list while they debated baby names. She wanted their daughter to have those initials, no matter what. Colin nodded slowly, managing a strained smile. "That's a beautiful name. Thank you, sir. Do you come here often?" "This corner." She tilted her head, uncertain why he cared. "Sometimes after school. Mostly weekends. When I need to." He nodded again, more to himself than to her. "Could you be here again tomorrow? Same time?" Nora studied him carefully. He wasn't like most rich people. He didn't look through her like she was nothing. He looked like he was searching for something in her face. "Yes, sir. If it's not storming too bad, I'll be here." "Good. I'd like to talk to you again, if that's okay." She gave a small smile. It was the kind of smile that tried to be polite, but was wary underneath. The kind you learn when you've lived too much life too soon. "Okay. Thank you again, sir." She turned and walked to the next car, the melody still faint on her lips. Colin didn't move until the light turned green. When he did, it was Peter's voice that snapped him back. "Sir, are you all right?" Colin nodded, slowly pulling the car forward, but his voice was hoarse when he answered. "I think I just saw a ghost." He didn't speak the rest of the drive. Back at the mansion, the lights were still automated, the thermostat unchanged. The security panel blinked green as he stepped through the door, but the house felt different, as if someone had knocked the air out of it. He dropped his keys on the counter. Water still dripped from his coat. His wallet remained clenched in his hand. Riverlight? That song. The girl? Nora. She didn't just sing the melody. She knew the rhythm, the timing, the way Lena used to slow the last line like a whisper. Colin could still hear it echoing in his head. He walked upstairs to his study, opened the drawer where he kept the only USB drive he had never shared with anyone. It was old, cracked at the edges. Inside was one recording. Lena, rocking Emily in her arms, her voice shaky but full of love. He hit play. Riverlight drifted through the speakers. He closed his eyes. The way she hit the high note, the slight tremor in her voice, it was exactly how Nora had sung it. Not similar, identical. Colin sat down hard, one hand over his mouth. His thoughts spiraled. What if? No, that was impossible. He had buried Emily. He had signed the death certificate. He had held a tiny white coffin. But what if something had gone wrong? What if someone Lena had known something he didn't? He thought back. The crash had been blamed on mechanical failure. A blown tire on a rural road. No other vehicles involved. But Lena's body had been so badly damaged, they told him to skip viewing the remains. The child, the baby, was confirmed by bracelet and DNA. Or was it he hadn't seen her himself? He had been unconscious in another hospital for nearly a day. By the time he woke, the decisions had been made. The funeral planned. Now. An 8-year-old girl was singing a lullaby that didn't exist outside his home. He stood up suddenly. If this was a coincidence, it was the most heartbreaking one he had ever encountered. But if it wasn't, then he needed answers, and he needed them now. Colin Hart didn't sleep that night. The rain clattered against the windows like fingers drumming on his conscience. He stood by the glass for hours, arms crossed, eyes unfocused. Downstairs. The Mustang sat in the garage, still glistening from the rain. But it wasn't the car that haunted him. It was the melody, the hum that pierced 7 years of silence, like a voice calling from beyond. He hadn't heard Riverlight since Lena died. There were no recordings, no sheet music, no lullaby book to pass down. Lena composed it by heart, for Emily alone. It was never meant to be shared, and now it was being sung in the street by a girl who shouldn't know it existed. Colin rubbed his eyes and paced across the dark hardwood floors. The bedroom felt too large, the study too sterile. He drifted between rooms, each one more echoing than the last, trying to convince himself that grief was playing tricks on his memory. He opened a drawer in his study and took out the only photo he ever kept on display. Lena holding baby Emily in the garden, both of them laughing. The sunlight catching the wisps of Emily's hair. Her eyes, bright blue, with a sliver of brown in the right one. A rare genetic quirk Lena had adored. He stared at the photo for a long time. Then he pulled his laptop closer, opened a secure folder, and searched for the pediatric records that had been digitized before the crash. There it was. Sectoral heterochromia, AB negative blood. A note from their pediatrician, Dr. Wallace, calling Emily's eye color uniquely striking. Colin exhaled sharply. He wasn't imagining it. The girl's eyes were the same. Not just blue, not just green, but a soft turquoise with a brown crescent in the right iris. She hadn't just reminded him of Emily. She looked exactly like Emily might look if she'd grown up. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling as if it might give him answers. His heart thundered in his chest, but his mind screamed caution. Coincidences happen. Children hum songs they don't know. Eye color repeats. There was no proof. Not yet. But the ache in his chest didn't feel like coincidence. It felt like memory. The next morning, he made a call to someone he hadn't spoken to in nearly 3 years. Sarah Lockridge picked up on the second ring. "Colin," she said cautiously, "it's early. Is something wrong? I need you to find someone for me." She was silent for a beat. "You know I'm not cheap. I'm not asking for a favor. I'll pay whatever it takes. But I need you to look into a little girl in Clearhaven." A pause. "Did you say little girl? Her name is Nora Elise Camden, 8 years old. Lives with a woman named Joan Camden. I don't know if she's her mother or foster parent, but there's something you need to see for yourself." Sarah's voice dropped into a tone he remembered from their years working together on corporate fraud cases. Cool, focused, analytical. "You think she's someone else?" "I don't think. I know. Or at least, I need to know." "Meet me in my office in an hour," she said. By the time Colin reached Sarah's modest office on the edge of downtown, he had pulled together every file he could remember. Old medical scans, Emily's baby photos, even a USB recording of Lena humming River Light. Sarah sat behind a cluttered desk, her black-rimmed glasses perched low on her nose. "You've always been the logical one." "Colin, what changed?" He hesitated before sliding the photo of Nora across the desk. Taken the day before, rain dripping from her coat, her smile uncertain, her eyes undeniable. Sarah studied the photo, then looked at him. "This girl looks like your daughter. She doesn't just look like her." She hummed the lullaby. "River Light." Sarah blinked. "That song Lena wrote, the one she refused to share." He nodded. "And she has the same eyes, the same blood type, if I'm right. The timeline fits. Joan Camden is a retired ER nurse. Could have accessed hospital records, created new ones." Sarah sat back and crossed her arms. "Colin, you buried Emily. You saw the casket. I never saw her body." He interrupted. "Not directly. I was unconscious. They told me she died, that Lena died too. But what if Lena got out? What if she took Emily and vanished to protect her?" Sarah didn't dismiss him outright. Instead, she opened a legal pad and began writing. "If what you're saying is even remotely true, we'll need to verify everything. Birth records, medical records, any gaps in their paper trail. You said the girl's name is Nora Elise Camden." "Yes, that's weird. What Lena's middle name was Elise. You always said she wanted your second child to have those initials NEC. Colin swallowed. "I know." They worked in silence for the next half hour. Sarah ran database checks on school enrollment, hospital visits, and municipal files. Something strange emerged almost immediately. "There's no birth record for Nora before age 1. She murmured. "What does that mean?" "It means someone created her identity when she was already a toddler. Which doesn't happen unless there's a reason to hide something." Colin leaned forward. "Joan Camden. Find out everything about her. Where she worked. Where she lived in 2016 and 2017. Who she had contact with. Already on it." Colin stood and paced the office. His hands shook. The room felt too small. If this is real, if Lena somehow saved Emily, then someone wanted them dead. Sarah finished, and Lena knew it. He nodded slowly. "She called me the night before the crash. Said something wasn't right, that someone had gotten too close. I thought it was just her anxiety. But now I wonder if she saw something I didn't." Sarah looked at him, her face unreadable. "Colin, if this girl really is Emily, your life is about to change in ways you can't imagine. Are you ready for that? I don't care what it costs, even if it means reliving everything, especially then." Clearhaven looked different when Sarah Lockridge arrived in town. The streets were narrower, the buildings older, their windows smeared with years of weather and soot. She passed a mural of children holding hands beneath the words, "You belong here," faded from sun and neglect. It reminded her of the kind of place people either escaped from or never left. She parked across from a school playground. A line of kids chased one another beneath crooked monkey bars while a teacher yelled about snack time. A small figure sat alone near the fence, head bent over a paperback book. Sarah raised her camera, zoomed in, and clicked twice. Nora Elise Camden. Even from this distance, the resemblance was chilling. The shape of her eyes, the way she bit her lip while reading. Sarah had seen photos of Emily Hart at age 3. The connection wasn't imagined. It was genetic. That night, in a corner booth of a low-lit diner, Sarah sent Colin the photos along with a message. "I believe you." The reply came quickly. "Then tell me everything." She started with the obvious. Nora had enrolled in Clearhaven Elementary at age 5. No birth certificate before that. No medical records until shortly before her enrollment. The address on file belonged to Joan Camden, a retired nurse who had worked at Ridgefield Medical Center, the same hospital that received Lena and Emily the night of the crash. Joan had retired in December 2017, just weeks after the crash. And then she vanished from professional records. No LinkedIn, no certifications renewed, no forwarding address, until Nora showed up in her care. Sarah requested access to Ridgefield's archived personnel logs and internal shift schedules from the year of the crash. It took a favor from a hospital contact, but within hours, she had confirmation. Joan Camden had been working the ER the night the accident occurred, and her logbook contained an anomaly. 2 hours before her official shift started, her ID badge was scanned into a restricted pediatric ward, no medical chart filed, no patient ID assigned. Just one line in the system. Observation unauthorized infant intake. Non-registered. Sarah read it twice before picking up the phone. Colin answered immediately. "It's her," she said. He didn't respond right away. "Tell me everything." Joan was there that night, not just at the hospital, but in the restricted ward. A baby came in. No record, no chart, no formal admittance, and that baby vanished from the logs. 2 months later, Nora appears in Joan's care with a completely new identity. Colin felt his knees weaken. He sat on the edge of his bed, clutching the phone. Then Lena did it. She saved Emily. She got her out. It looks that way. But she didn't act alone. Joan must have helped her. And it wasn't just medical files. Someone erased footage, altered timestamps, deleted ER camera logs. Do you think Lena was being followed? I think she knew someone powerful wanted her daughter gone. And I think Joan gave up everything to help her disappear. Colin exhaled, his chest tight. But why didn't Lena tell me? Because she didn't know who to trust. And maybe she thought you were in danger too. The thought landed like a punch to the stomach. 7 years ago, he had been so deep in grief he didn't question anything. But what if the people around him had orchestrated the very tragedy he mourned? Colin's mind reeled back to the boardroom meetings he barely remembered, to the faces that looked too sad to be suspicious, and to one in particular, Damon Kessler, his co-founder, his closest friend, the man who'd taken over Hearttech's daily operations after the crash, who had insisted Colin step away for his health, who had handled the burial arrangements, and who had filed insurance claims on Colin's behalf without ever asking permission. A memory surfaced, a document he barely glanced at, life insurance. He hung up with Sarah and opened his secure files. He scrolled through a folder labeled Post-Crash Recovery. Most of it was unread correspondence, sympathy notes, financial statements. Then he found it. A scanned copy of a life insurance policy filed 3 months before the crash. $10 million. Beneficiary Damon Kessler. His blood ran cold. He hadn't authorized that. The signature wasn't his, or at least, it didn't look like his. And the policy covered accidental death in business-related travel. Colin's hand shook as he dialed Sarah again. "You need to look into Damon." "Already started," she said. "I thought you'd remember." He was the one who blocked the Riverside housing project, wasn't he? He said it wasn't profitable enough, but Lena was working on it too. It was her passion project. Sarah's voice was sharper now. "So she gets too close to something. They stage a crash. You're taken out. She disappears with the child. And Damon walks away with control of the company and $10 million. It sounded absurd, except it wasn't. It fit. Every cold call, every hushed conversation Lena had made in the weeks before the crash, every journal entry she scribbled late at night, saying she feared they were being watched. Colin had dismissed it as stress, as new mom anxiety. He had been wrong. And now, 7 years later, a little girl's song had pulled the thread. The next morning, Sarah made a visit to St. Bernardine's Hospital, where Joan Camden was currently being treated for pneumonia. She entered under the guise of a family friend, flashed her old nursing badge at the front desk, and walked calmly toward room 214. Joan was asleep when she arrived. Thin, pale, her face drawn with the wear of years not just hard, but hidden. On the nightstand was a small jewelry box, faded silver, the kind that might hold a locket or a folded note. Sarah opened it gently and found a music box. She turned the key once. Riverlight began to play. The exact notes, the exact tempo. Sarah stepped back in stunned silence. She recorded it on her phone and sent it directly to Colin. He didn't call this time. He simply replied with a single line, "I need to see her." Clearhaven was overcast when Colin pulled into the parking lot just a few blocks from where he'd seen her last. He didn't bring the Mustang this time. He didn't want to draw attention. Instead, he sat behind the wheel of a black sedan, blending into the line of worn-out cars parked along 4th Street. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. His heart thudded against his ribs like it didn't know whether to hope or to panic. Across the street, a light drizzle tapped gently against the windshield. Pedestrians walked with hoods pulled low, their heads down, their pace quick. But he wasn't watching them. He was watching her. Nora stood beneath the awning of a small grocery store, wiping down her squeegee with a cloth from her backpack. She looked smaller than he remembered. Or maybe that was just the rain making her seem more fragile. She adjusted her yellow raincoat and tied the strings of her hood with familiar precision. Her movements were exact, like someone who had repeated the same routine so many times that it had become second nature. Colin stepped out of the car slowly, heart pounding, footsteps cautious on the wet pavement. He didn't want to scare her, didn't want to seem like just another man with a question or a favor or a handout, but he had to know. Nora spotted him first. Her head tilted slightly, and for a moment, uncertainty passed across her face. Then recognition sparked. She smiled. "You came back," she called out, jogging a few steps toward him with her cleaning supplies. "I wasn't sure you would." Colin nodded, swallowing the emotion rising in his throat. "I said I would." She approached the car. The Mustang wasn't here, and she looked around, mildly disappointed. "I brought a different one today." "That's okay." This one's bigger, more window. She pulled out her spray bottle and got to work, her hands moving efficiently. Colin watched in silence, the way her braid swayed, the way she furrowed her brow when she missed a spot. He wasn't studying her the way a stranger does. He was looking for something, and then he saw it again. Her eyes, even through the mist, even through the streaks of water running down the glass. They shimmered with a color that could only be described as sea glass blue, flecked with hints of green. But it was the right one that stopped him, that unmistakable brown crescent, the tiny sliver of a different world hiding inside an ocean. He'd seen it before, in Emily. He remembered the pediatrician's words from so long ago. Sectoral heterochromia, less than 1% of the population. Harmless, rare, beautiful. "You okay?" Mr. Norah's voice pulled him back. She was standing beside the car now, waiting for payment. Her eyes locked on his, and he realized too late he was staring. "Sorry," he said, fumbling for his wallet. "I just got lost in thought." She smiled again. It wasn't just polite this time. It was kind and natural, the kind of smile that made people feel seen. "Here," he said, handing her a 20. Her eyes widened. "Sir, that's too much. It's just a window. I insist." She took the bill carefully, almost like it might vanish if she moved too quickly. Colin hesitated. He had practiced the words in his head a dozen times, but they sounded clumsy now. "Can I ask you something?" She nodded, cautiously. "Do you like music?" She tilted her head. "Yeah, I guess so. I like to hum. Mostly old songs. Do you remember who taught you Riverlight?" She blinked. "You know that song?" He nodded slowly. "My mom used to sing it. She said," voice softer now, "when I was little, I don't remember her face really, but I remember her voice. She used to sing that song when it rained, or when she thought I was scared. I only know part of it now. The rest I kind of make up." Colin felt something in his chest crack. "Do you remember her name?" Nora shook her head. "No. Joan said her name was Lena, but I only have that from a photo. She died when I was really small. I just remember the smell of flowers and a song. That's all." Colin had to look away. His hands trembled. "Do you live with Joan now?" She nodded. "She's my grandma, or foster grandma. I don't know. I just call her Mom. She gets tired a lot lately. Her lungs are bad. That's why I clean windows, so we can get her medicine." There was no pride in her voice, but no shame either. Just a clear understanding of the way things were. Colin swallowed hard. "Would it be all right if I helped?" She frowned. "Why would you want to do that? You don't even know us. Sometimes helping someone doesn't require knowing everything," he said gently. "Sometimes you just see someone, and something tells you they matter." Nora studied him, her eyes narrowing slightly in that same way Lena used to when she was trying to read his intentions. It was uncanny. "Okay," she said finally. "You can come visit, but only if you bring groceries. Deal?" She smiled again and turned to move to the next car. "Nora." She looked back. "I'd like to meet Joan. Would that be okay?" She considered the request carefully, her expression changing slightly. Not fear, not distrust, just thoughtfulness. "She's in the hospital right now. But maybe you could come with me sometime. You seem nice." Colin almost laughed. The way children could read through people so easily never stopped amazing him. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Nora gave him a little wave and disappeared into the next row of cars. Squeegee in hand, melody on her lips once again. Colin watched her move, watched the way she interacted with each driver. Polite but careful, hopeful but guarded. He sat back in his car and exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. She didn't know. She didn't know who she was, what had happened, what had been taken from her. But somehow, she carried every piece of her past with her, stitched into the way she sang, the way she helped, the way she smiled. And if he was right, if this girl truly was Emily, then it wasn't just his daughter he was looking at. It was the future Lena had died trying to protect. He picked up his phone and dialed Sarah. "I spoke with her," he said quietly when she answered. "And her name, her eyes, the song, everything lines up. Did you tell her?" "No, not yet. You sound different." Colin leaned back in the seat, watching Nora through the rain as she waved goodbye to another stranger. "I feel like I'm holding a thread that leads to everything I lost. But if I pull too hard, I might break it." "Then be patient," Sarah said. "Let it lead you. Don't force it." He nodded slowly. "I think I'm going to see Joan. Do you want me to come with you?" "Not yet. This part I need to do alone." "All right. Just promise me one thing." "What?" "Don't forget what this is really about. It's not about proving you were right. It's about giving that girl her truth." He closed his eyes. "I know, and I will." The corridors of St. Bernardine's Hospital smelled like antiseptic and rain. Colin walked past a cluster of nurses speaking softly near the reception desk, their voices blending into the hum of machines and the distant roll of gurneys. His shoes made no sound against the polished linoleum floor. He had memorized the room number 214, but still double-checked the sign on the door as he stopped outside. He stood there for a moment, not out of fear, not even hesitation, but reverence. On the other side of that door was a woman who may have saved his child. A woman who had disappeared into silence for 7 years and raised someone else's daughter like her own. He knocked gently and waited. "Come in." Her voice was soft but steady. When he entered, Joan Camden was propped up on 2 pillows, her skin pale and her cheeks hollow, but her eyes sharp. A nasal cannula delivered oxygen through small plastic tubes, and a glass of untouched water sat on the bedside tray. She studied him as he stepped in. "You're not hospital staff?" "No. My name is Colin Hart." Her eyes didn't widen. No gasp. No dropped glass. Just a small nod of recognition, like she had been expecting him for years. "You're late." Colin blinked. "Excuse me." "You were always going to come. I just didn't know when." He stepped closer and sat in the chair beside her bed. "How long have you known that you'd find her, that she might be my daughter?" Joan's fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the blanket on her lap. Her breathing was measured, deliberate. Since the day she started humming Riverlight. She didn't know where she learned it. Said it just lived in her bones. And I knew right then. Lena had gotten through. So she is. "Yes." Colin sat back. The word hit him with the weight of years. "Emily." Joan nodded. "She doesn't remember anything from before you bits and pieces. Dreams, mostly. Scents. Songs. She's always had music inside her, like something waiting to be sung. And she's always been kind. Brave. Sometimes too much for a child." Colin felt a lump rise in his throat. What happened that night? Joan closed her eyes, recalling it like someone sifting through a dusty attic. "I was 2 hours early for my shift. I'd gotten a call, no name, just a voice. She said something terrible had happened, that she didn't trust anyone else, that a child was coming in who couldn't be documented. She begged me not to ask questions, just to keep the girl safe. I knew it was Lena. How? Because I knew her voice. I'd treated her twice before. Once when she cut her arm in that housing project protest. Another time after Emily was born. She was always talking about justice, about protecting people from systems that didn't care. And I remember thinking, if something ever happened, she'd fight like hell for that baby. And she did. Joan continued, her voice rasping. When the paramedics brought in the wreck, Lena was conscious for exactly 3 minutes. She clutched my wrist and said, "They'll come for her. Don't let them." Then she passed out. She never woke up. Colin wiped his face with both hands. The pain he had buried for years was unraveling in real time. And the hospital. They knew a child came in, but no one logged her. The trauma floor was chaos. The system crashed for 2 hours. Someone in IT later said it was a glitch. I think it was something else. Colin's voice cracked. And you just took her. No, I ran a blood test first, just in case. I saw the heterochromia, saw the blood type, AB negative. Then the lullaby, the way she reached for my hand. I knew it was her, but I couldn't keep her with me legally. So I used an old ID to file a change of custody under emergency foster care. Forged the rest. You gave up your life for her? Joan smiled faintly. She became my life. Colin sat in silence. The weight of her sacrifice, the years of hiding, the quiet courage, it all sank in. "Thank you," he whispered. She looked at him then. Really looked. She deserves to know. But gently, she's strong. But she's still just a child. I won't force it. Good. Let her guide it. A nurse entered with new medication, and Colin stood to leave. "One more thing," Joan said before he reached the door. "Yes, she sings like her mother. You should hear her when she thinks no one's listening." He smiled, throat tight. "I already have. Later that night, back in his study." Colin sat at the piano for the first time in years. He had dusted it earlier that week without realizing why. Now his fingers rested on the keys like they were returning home. He didn't play the songs he used to write. Instead, he pressed the notes of Riverlight. Soft, measured, careful. He didn't cry, not this time, because something was forming, a path forward, not just to Emily, but to healing. He opened his laptop and began writing a letter. Not a legal one, not formal, just honest. "Dear Nora, there's something I need to tell you." He stopped, backspaced the line, then typed again. "Dear Emily, no, not yet, not until she was ready." He closed the laptop and picked up his phone. Nora had given him a small piece of paper earlier in the week, a number written in pencil. "For groceries," she had joked. He dialed it now. "Hello." Her voice was clear. "Hi, it's me, Colin." "Oh, hi. Is everything okay?" "Everything's more than okay. I was just wondering, would you like to come visit sometime? I have a garden. It's not much, but there are flowers. And maybe I could show you a song I've been working on." A pause. "You play piano, used to." "Thought I'd try again." "I'd like that. I'll ask Joan. Take your time." "Okay. Good night. Mr. Colin, good night. Nora." As he ended the call, Colin looked out the window. The moon was rising above Clearhaven, cutting through the clouds. Somewhere, not far from where he sat, a little girl was curling up beside an empty music box, and for the first time in years, he felt like the night was holding something new. Hope the house was nothing like Nora imagined. She had expected something glossy and cold, the kind of place rich people kept clean but never lived in. But the moment she stepped onto the wraparound porch, she felt something different. Not warmth exactly, but quiet. The kind of quiet that held its breath. Colin met her at the front door. He wasn't wearing a suit this time, just a soft gray sweater and jeans, like someone trying to remember who they were before the world got complicated. "You made it," he said gently. Nora nodded, adjusting her backpack on her shoulders. "I brought something." She held out a folded paper napkin. Inside was a peanut butter sandwich, cut into triangles. "For lunch? You said you didn't cook much." He smiled, caught between gratitude and something heavier. "That's very thoughtful." "Thank you. Nora." She stepped inside and looked around. The ceilings were high, the furniture simple but expensive. Still, nothing was shiny for the sake of being shiny. A stack of books sat beside the couch, and a pair of running shoes lay by the door, slightly scuffed. Shoes by the door meant someone actually lived here. He led her through the kitchen and out the back door, where a small garden bloomed in quiet defiance against the chill of fall. It wasn't perfect. Some flowers sagged, others leaned wildly toward the sun, but it was alive. Nora knelt near a patch of marigolds and touched the petals like they were old friends. "Did you plant all these some? Others were already here." "My wife." She loved this garden. She looked up at him, sensing something in his voice. What happened to her? Colin hesitated. The truth hovered in his chest like a bird, fluttering, unsure if it should take flight. "She passed away. A long time ago." "Oh, I'm sorry." "Thank you." They sat on the garden bench in silence for a moment. The air carried a faint scent of mint and earth. Birds chirped from somewhere behind the fence. Nora opened her backpack and pulled out a sketchbook. "Do you draw?" She nodded. "Sometimes. When I don't know how I feel. It helps. May I see?" She flipped through pages. Flowers, a broken swing, a pair of eyes, blue with a brown crescent in the corner. "That one?" "That's from a dream." Colin's breath caught. "Do you have that dream often?" She nodded, not looking up. "There's a woman in it. She's singing, and I'm very small. I can't see her face, but I feel safe." "Does she sing River Light?" "Yes. Always." He reached for a flower, fingers trembling. "I think your mom was a remarkable person." "I think so, too. Joan says she was brave." "She was." Nora looked at him sharply. How would you know Colin didn't flinch? He had rehearsed this moment, but nothing prepared him for the clarity of her gaze. She wasn't accusing, just curious, needing to understand. Because I knew someone who knew her. What was she like, Strong? Funny? Stubborn? She loved stories, and she believed the world could be better than it was. Nora smiled faintly. That sounds right. They returned to the house after an hour in the garden. Colin made tea, and Nora sat at the grand piano, her small hands grazing the keys like they were precious. You can play if you'd like, he said. I don't know how. Try humming. The piano might follow. She laughed, but then did just that. Riverlight drifted from her lips, slow and gentle. Colin's hands moved without thinking, matching the notes she couldn't name. They built the song together, one hum, one chord at a time. When the final note faded, Nora sat perfectly still. I feel like I've played this before, but I don't remember when. That's okay, he said softly. Sometimes our hearts remember things our minds forget. She looked at him again, studying his face. You remind me of someone, too. Oh, I don't know who. It's like a shadow, but it's nice." He swallowed hard. "I'm glad." Before she left that day, she asked the question that had been pressing against her ribs. "Why do you help me?" Colin didn't rush the answer. "Because I see something in you that I lost once, and helping you helps me find it again." "That sounds like something from a book," she said, tilting her head. "Maybe, but it's still true." She nodded slowly. "Can I come back?" "Any time. That night." Colin stood in the garden long after she'd gone. The marigolds glowed under the porch light. He turned on his phone and played the recording of Lena's lullaby. Then he played the clip of Nora humming it that first rainy day. Same pitch, same rhythm, same breath. She was his. He knew it now, not just in theory, but in every cell of his body. But knowing wasn't enough. He needed to earn her, to help her understand not just who she was, but who she could become. The next time Nora came to visit, she brought questions, not in the form of accusations or demands, but quiet pauses between conversation, a glance that lingered too long, a silence that carried weight. Colin felt it the moment she stepped into the house. There was a shift in her energy, not mistrust, just searching. He offered her tea as usual, and she accepted, though she held the cup without drinking. They returned to the piano bench, but she didn't hum that day. Instead, she laid her hands flat on the keys, staring at her reflection in the black lacquer surface. "Do you believe people can forget who they are?" The question landed like a stone in still water. Colin didn't answer right away. He looked at her, really looked. There was a crease between her eyebrows that hadn't been there before, a stillness that felt heavier than usual. "Yes," he said softly. "Sometimes we forget because remembering hurts too much." Nora nodded like she'd already known the answer. Her fingers drifted across the keys but never pressed. "Joan had a photo. I found it when I was 7, hidden in the back of a drawer. It was a woman holding a baby. Her eyes looked like mine, but the name on the back said Lena Hart." Colin's heart stopped. She told me it was just a coincidence, that she found the photo in a donation box, but I always wondered. She turned to him then, her eyes piercing. "Do you know who Lena Hart was?" Colin met her gaze with the quiet steadiness he had practiced for weeks. "Yes, I did." "Who was she?" He swallowed hard. "She was someone I loved very deeply. Were you?" "Married. We were partners, in every way that mattered." "And the baby?" He nodded once. "Emily." Nora sat back, her arms folded tightly across her chest. The walls were starting to tilt inside her, but she didn't run. She processed. That's what made her different. She was quiet, not because she was afraid, but because she wanted to understand. "Was Emily your daughter?" "She was." Colin braced for the next question, the one he knew was coming. "Do you think I'm her?" His breath caught. A lifetime of grief, confusion, and longing hung in the space between them. He could lie, delay, deflect, but he didn't. "I think you might be." She stared at him for a long time. "But my name is Nora." "I know. And I don't remember you." "I know that too." "Then why do I feel like I do?" Colin's voice broke. "Because memory isn't just in our minds. It's in our hands, our music, our dreams. It's in the way we feel safe around people we've never met." Her lip trembled. She looked away. "Do you think I was taken?" "No. I think you were saved. By Joan and by your mother." But why didn't anyone tell me? Because they were trying to protect you. Sometimes love makes people choose silence over truth. And sometimes that silence lasts longer than it should. She pressed her hands into her lap, tightly. Joan's been sick. Really sick. I think she's afraid to tell me things. Would you like me to be there when you talk to her? She nodded slowly, eyes shining. I don't want to be alone when I ask. You won't be. Later that evening, Colin called Sarah and told her everything. Her voice was calm, but he could hear the tension behind it. She's strong. Colin, but she's still just a kid. If this gets out, if Damon catches wind of it, I'll protect her. You'll need more than good intentions. You'll need legal guardianship, paperwork, and fast. What about DNA? That will help. But it's not a silver bullet. Damon has resources. He can challenge anything. We need Joan to testify. She's dying. Sarah. Then we need her on record before she goes. Video. Audio, something concrete. I'll talk to her tomorrow. Just be careful. You're not the only one who's been watching. That night, Colin barely slept. He walked the halls of his house like a ghost, retracing old steps. Every room held echoes. He found himself in Emily's old room, the one he'd locked up 7 years ago. Dust covered the windowsill. A stuffed bear slumped in the corner. The walls still bore faint outlines of clouds from when he and Lena had painted it together. He sat on the floor, his back against the bed, and wept for the time lost, for the girl who might never remember him, and for the life that had unraveled without explanation. But when he woke the next morning, there was something different in his chest. Resolve. He dressed quietly, packed a small canvas bag with Nora's favorite tea, a new sketchbook, and a copy of River Lights sheet music he had transcribed from memory. He wasn't sure what today would bring, but he was done hiding from it. At the hospital, Joan looked weaker than before. Her skin had thinned, her breath raspier, but her eyes remained clear. I figured you'd come back, she said as he entered, and I brought someone with me. Nora stepped into the room, smaller somehow, her shoulders drawn up. Hi, Mom. Joan's eyes softened. Hi, baby. There was a pause. Then Nora crossed the room and sat beside her bed. Is it true? Joan looked at Colin, then back at Nora. What do you want to know? Was I born with a different name? Yes. Was my mother's name Lena Hart? Yes. And was he? She pointed at Colin. My father. Joan's voice cracked. Yes. Nora leaned forward, her hands gripping the blanket. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid. I didn't want to lose you. And I didn't know how to make you understand why it all had to happen. You could have told me the truth. I know. And I was wrong. Silence filled the room. Heavy, but not destructive. More like a silence waiting to be broken gently. Nora turned to Colin. Can I see pictures of when I was little? Of course. And can we try the song again? He nodded, unable to speak. He took out the sheet music, sat beside her on the hospital's old upright piano, and began to play. She hummed. And this time she didn't stop halfway. She knew the ending. The first thing Colin did the next morning was call his lawyer. It wasn't a casual call. Not the kind made from a kitchen table with coffee and sunlight. It was made from his home office, the blinds drawn, his voice low and certain. Because this time, he wasn't just trying to remember what he had lost. He was reclaiming it. Her name is Emily Hart, he said, and I need to prove it. The lawyer, Mara Ellison, paused on the other end of the line. Do you have documentation? No, nothing official. But I have her. I have the woman who raised her. I have a song only her mother sang. I have memories. A blood type match. I have enough to start. It's not enough for court. Not yet. Then help me make it enough. Mara agreed to take the case, but warned him that the process wouldn't be quiet. The moment they filed for legal guardianship, especially with a name change request, flags would be raised. People would look, and Damon Kessler, he would know. Colin leaned over his desk and whispered, "Let him come." Later that afternoon, Colin and Nora sat together in the living room, Joan resting in the bedroom down the hall. Her breathing had become shallow, her eyes closed more than open now, but she had given her blessing. "You two need each other," she had said. Now Colin showed Nora a collection of photo albums he'd kept boxed for years, not for lack of love, but because the memories hurt too much to hold. "That's you," he said, pointing to a photo. "You were two. You just figured out how to say pasta and set it for everything." She squinted. "I look happy." "You were." She turned the page slowly. Another photo, Lena sitting cross-legged on the floor. Emily curled into her lap, both faces radiant with laughter. "That's her." "Right." "Yes. That's your mom." Nora touched the image gently, tracing the shape of Lena's cheekbone. Then she whispered, "Why does it feel like I've missed 1,000 birthdays because you have? And so have I." Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes, but she wiped them away quickly. "What happens next?" "We file a petition for guardianship. Then we submit a DNA test. That will help." "Will I have to go to court eventually?" "Yes." "Will I have to talk?" "Not unless you want to. I'll speak for you." She looked at him carefully. "But I want to speak. I want to say I choose this." Colin smiled through the ache in his chest. "Then you will." 3 days later, Sarah Lockridge arrived in Clearhaven. She stepped out of a rented sedan in black boots and a long navy coat, her expression unreadable behind tinted sunglasses. Colin met her at the curb. "You didn't have to come in person." "I did," she said, "because we're not just filing paperwork. We're stirring ghosts." Sarah was a former civil rights investigator who had worked with Colin before, back when HeartTech was just an idea scribbled on a napkin and no one believed in its ethics first model. Now she was his firewall, his bloodhound, and his strategist. She sat with Nora at the dining table and spoke softly. "Do you know who Damon Kessler is?" "Yes." "Colin said he used to work with him." "He did. But he also filed life insurance claims in your name. Claims that paid out millions." Nora blinked. "That's creepy." "It's more than creepy. It's criminal. But only if we can prove intent. What happens if he finds out I'm alive? That's why we're filing with confidentiality clauses. We're marking your case under emergency guardianship with anonymity requests due to risk of harm." "Will that keep me safe?" Sarah hesitated. "It'll slow him down. But you need to be ready. You're not just a missing girl anymore. You're evidence." That night, Colin received an email from an unknown address. "You always were sentimental. Stay out of it. No signature, no threats. Just a sentence." But it was enough. He forwarded it to Sarah. "He knows." She replied. The next morning, Mara submitted the official paperwork. Guardianship request, DNA testing, identity restoration petition. Colin had insisted they attach the music box audio file, Lena's handwritten lyrics, and Joan's video statement. Joan had recorded it from her hospital bed, frail, but clear. "This girl is Emily Hart. I took her in because the system would not protect her. Her mother saved her life, and I did my best to make sure that sacrifice wasn't in vain. It was raw. It was honest. It was enough to break open every sealed record from the night of the crash, but it also set something else in motion. 2 days later, a notice appeared on the door of Colin's home. You are hereby summoned to a civil hearing. Claimant Damon Kessler. Allegation: wrongful interference with custody. He stood in the hallway, paper in hand, breath caught in his throat. Nora walked in, holding a mug of tea. "What's that?" "It's a lie," he said quietly, "and we're going to fight it." She didn't flinch. "Then let's go to court." That night, Colin wrote Lena a letter he would never send. "I found her. She's everything you said she'd be, and more. And I'm going to protect her the way you couldn't. Not because you failed, but because you trusted the wrong people. I won't make that mistake again." At the bottom of the page, he wrote 2 names, Lena Hart, Emily Hart. He pressed his thumb beside each, like a signature, like a promise. The night before the court hearing, Nora stood in the bathroom of Colin's guest room, staring into the mirror. She studied her face like it belonged to someone else. The curve of her jaw, the way her hair always curled at the ends, no matter how she brushed it straight. Her eyes, the left one sea glass blue, the right with that strange brown crescent she used to think was a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake. It was a clue. She leaned closer, trying to remember the face of the woman in her dreams, the one who smelled like lavender and sang lullabies in the dark. "Riverlight," she whispered, letting the melody slip out. It filled the silence like a secret. And when she closed her eyes, she saw flashes. A porch with chipped paint, a yellow bowl full of strawberries, a hand stroking her hair. But the moment she tried to reach deeper, it vanished, behind her. The door creaked open. "Sorry," Colin said gently. "I just wanted to check on you." She didn't turn around. "Do I still get to be me?" His footsteps stopped just short of her reflection. "You've always been you, but now I'm someone else, too." He nodded slowly. "You're more, not less." She turned to face him. "I'm scared." "Me too." They stood in that small space for a while, not talking, just breathing, matching rhythms. "Do you think they'll believe us?" she asked. Colin looked down at her. "I don't know, but we'll walk in with the truth, and the truth has a weight you can't fake." She thought about that. "Can we rehearse?" Of course. So in the living room, late into the night, they ran through questions. Sarah had given them a list what the judge might ask, how to stay calm, what to do if Damon showed up. He'll try to twist things. Sarah had said, he'll say you're confused, that you're being manipulated, that Colin is exploiting grief. But we have facts. We have Joan's statement, and we have you. When they finished practicing, Nora sat back on the couch and hugged a pillow tightly to her chest. "Why did my mother trust him?" Colin exhaled. "Because he was good at pretending to be safe. But she was smarter than that." She was. But even the smartest people can be fooled when they're tired. When they think they have no one else. Nora looked up. "Have you ever been fooled like that?" He hesitated. "Yes. I let him into my company. I called him a friend. And then I lost everything I built because I didn't see who he really was." She reached over and took his hand. "Then maybe we're not so different." He smiled, surprised by how strong her grip was. Maybe not. The morning came faster than either of them expected. Colin wore a navy suit, not the kind that screamed power, but one that said he'd come prepared. Nora wore a dress Lena had bought for her 9th birthday, one Joan had carefully preserved in a cedar-lined drawer. It still fit barely and felt like armor. Sarah met them at the courthouse steps, a thick folder in hand and fire in her eyes. "Ready?" she asked. Nora nodded. "As I'll ever be." The courtroom was small, not like in movies. No jury, just a tired-looking judge with reading glasses and a firm voice. Damon was already seated with his lawyer, a sleek man in an overpriced suit, whispering into Damon's ear like he was feeding poison one drop at a time. Colin didn't look at Damon directly, but he felt the stare, cold, calculating. Nora sat quietly beside Colin, eyes scanning the room. When the judge finally called the case, everyone stood. Sarah opened, "Your Honor, this is a case of identity restoration and emergency guardianship. What we bring today is not only a request, but a correction of a mistake that has lasted nearly a decade." Damon's lawyer jumped in immediately. "Your Honor, my client has reason to believe the minor is being coached, and that Mr. Hart is attempting to exploit a traumatic past for personal gain." The judge held up a hand. "We'll hear from everyone, one at a time." Then he turned to Nora. "Miss Camden, may I call you that?" "Yes, sir." "Can you tell me, in your own words, why you're here?" Nora took a breath. Her hands trembled, but her voice stayed even. "Because I want to know who I really am." "And do you believe Mr. Hart is your father?" "I don't just believe it. I feel it. In the way he looks at me, in the stories he remembers, in the way the music sounds different when he plays it." The judge blinked. Music. She nodded. "My mom used to sing a song. I didn't know the whole thing until I heard him play it. Then I remembered the ending." "And what do you want from the court to be allowed to choose?" "I want my name back. And I want him to be the one who signs my school papers and comes to my plays and knows when I'm scared without me saying it." There was a pause. Then the judge turned to Damon. "Do you contest her identity?" "I do," Damon said, standing. "I believe she's been misled. There's no clear proof, only sentiment." Sarah rose. "Then allow us to submit the DNA results. A 99.9% match, along with Joan Camden's deathbed statement, filed under affidavit, and photographic evidence from before the accident." The judge took the folder and skimmed the top page. "Mr. Kessler, you filed a claim on Emily Hart's life insurance policy 7 years ago. Would you care to explain?" Damon's lawyer objected, but the judge waved it off. "This goes to motive. Speak." Damon's jaw tightened. "It was filed in error. I was the emergency contact at the time. I believed she had died. And you didn't correct the record. There was no record to correct. No body." Colin stood then, calm and measured. "Your Honor, there was a body. Lena Hart's, but not Emily's. Damon knew that. He covered it up to claim control of Hart Tech and the estate. He used her absence to enrich himself." The judge looked at Nora again. "Is that what you believe?" "I believe he wanted me gone, so no one would come looking." Silence filled the room again. Then the judge spoke. "I'll issue a preliminary guardianship to Mr. Hart, pending full review. As for identity restoration, Miss Camden, from this moment forward, you are officially recognized by this court as Emily Hart." Nora looked up, eyes wide. "Really?" The judge smiled faintly. "Really?" Colin's eyes filled. He reached over and took her hand. "Thank you, Your Honor." The gavel fell, and just like that, the world changed. The certificate arrived in the mail 2 days later. Inside a plain government envelope sat a single sheet of paper. It wasn't gold-trimmed or thick or ceremonious, but when Emily held it in her hands, It felt heavier than anything she'd ever touched. Her name, not Nora Elise Camden, Emily Lena Hart. She sat cross-legged on the porch of Colin's house, tracing her name with her finger like she was learning to write it for the first time. It didn't feel foreign. It felt like home, like a coat that had always been hers but was tucked away in someone else's closet. Colin stepped outside, holding 2 mugs of cocoa. "Cold morning," he said. She didn't answer right away, just held up the paper and smiled. "It's real." He sat beside her and handed her the mug. It always was. Now the world just caught up. "Do you remember what you felt the first time you said my name?" He looked up at the gray sky for a moment. Relief and guilt and joy, all tangled up. She sipped the cocoa, letting the silence stretch. "Do you think she'd be proud?" He didn't have to ask who she meant. "Your mom would be proud the second she saw you walk into that courtroom. Calm, brave, clear. She'd say, 'That's my girl.'" Emily smiled, but her eyes turned sad. "I miss someone I barely remember. That's the thing about real love," he said. "It plants roots so deep that even when you forget the shape of the tree, you still feel the shade." She leaned her head on his shoulder. It felt easy now, safe. Later that day, Sarah called with a warning. "He's trying to freeze the trust account." She said, "Damon filed an emergency motion to delay the release of Lena's estate to Emily. Says it's a misappropriation of assets." Colin gritted his teeth. "On what grounds that the estate was settled 7 years ago, and that you're manipulating a minor to reverse history? It's not going to work." "Right. Not if we move fast. But you need to be ready. He's desperate, and desperate men do dangerous things." That evening, Colin had the locks changed on the gates. Cameras were reactivated. Sarah sent 2 security contacts to stay nearby, not in uniform, just quiet figures who watched from a distance. Emily noticed one of them by the corner mailbox. "You expecting trouble?" He looked at her carefully. "Just being careful." She didn't push. But later that night, she left a drawing on his desk. It was a sketch of the house with small dots drawn around it, little watchful eyes. In the center, 2 figures stood close together. She had written one word underneath safe. It was the first night Colin slept through without waking. The next day, Emily had her first counseling session with Dr. Maya Chen, a child psychologist Sarah recommended. The session was supposed to be short, just introductions, but Maya let Emily lead. By the end of the hour, Emily had drawn a timeline on the whiteboard. A jagged line started from a house with a music note, then a crash, then a forest, then a little house with a tired woman, then Colin. When Maya asked what each part meant, Emily explained, "That's my mom. That's when everything stopped. That's when I started again. And that's when I remembered. When she came out of the office." Colin was waiting in the car. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, climbing into the passenger seat. "She didn't make me cry. That's a good sign." "Right. Definitely." She looked at him sideways. "Do you think we'll always be weird?" He smiled. "I hope so. The best people usually are." They drove home in silence, but the good kind, the kind that didn't need filling. That evening, a letter arrived at the front gate, hand-delivered. Colin opened it slowly, already sensing who it was from. A single sheet of ivory paper, handwritten in perfect script. "You win this round. But blood always calls blood. And she is more mine than yours. Just wait. No signature. But no one else could have written it." Colin showed it to Sarah the next morning. We can't prove it's from him, but the implication is clear. We escalate. She filed for a protection order within the hour. Emily wasn't told. Not yet. She was in the garden again, humming to the sunflowers. Colin watched from the window. He thought about how grief had first shaped him, how losing Lena had hollowed him out, how the silence afterward had made him think he would never feel music again. But here she was, humming, alive, that night. Emily sat at the piano again. This time, she played a full scale. Her fingers weren't confident, but they were sure enough. "Teach me," she asked. "Of course." He guided her hands. She learned fast, not just notes, but intention. She played Riverlight from memory. This time, she added her own ending, a new flourish, something gentle, something hers. Colin clapped softly. "That was beautiful. I want to write songs," she said. "Real ones, not just dreams." "You will. And maybe, one day, I'll tell our story in music." He nodded. "That would be perfect." She looked at him with a small smile. "Can we have a concert when the flowers bloom? We can have one every year." As she went upstairs to sleep, Colin sat alone at the piano bench. He didn't play. He just closed the lid, placed his hand on top, and whispered, "Thank you, Lena. She's almost home." The spring came late to Clear Haven that year. The frost lingered longer than usual. The flowers hesitated to bloom. The garden stayed quiet until one morning in April, when the first marigold pushed its way through the thawed soil. Emily was the first to see it. She crouched beside the flower, fingertips brushing against its soft orange petals. It reminded her of Leanie, of Joan, of all the women who had helped her survive when the world didn't know what to do with a little girl carrying too much silence. She stood and turned toward the house. It was the day of the community concert. Something simple, a piano, a few folding chairs in the garden, and a handwritten sign at the gate that read, "Music Lives Here." Emily had spent the last month writing her first original song. Not for school, not for therapy, for herself. She called it Remembering Sky. Colin helped her score the music. Sarah helped find a music teacher in town who could coach her on performance. And Maya, her therapist, helped her work through the nerves. "What if people cry when they hear it?" she had asked. "Then you'll have given them something real," Maya said. "And that's always worth it." That afternoon, as guests began to arrive, neighbors, friends, a few curious townspeople who had read about the court hearing in the paper, Colin sat beside Emily near the piano. "Nervous?" he asked. "A little. You don't have to do this." "You know, I want to." "Okay." She looked at the rows of chairs filling slowly. The garden buzzed with soft conversation and the rustle of late spring wind. "Do you think she'd hear it, wherever she is?" Colin turned to her. "I think she already has." The concert began with two students from the local middle school playing a violin duet. Then a retired music teacher performed a rendition of Clair de Lune. When it was Emily's turn, the MC simply said, "And now, someone who's found her voice again." She walked slowly to the piano, her sheet music tucked neatly under her arm. The room quieted. She didn't look at the audience at first, just at the keys. Then she spoke, softly. "This is for anyone who was told they were someone else, or told to forget, or told they were too small to matter. This is for my mom, for my grandma, for the man who waited, and for the girl I used to be." Then she played. The melody began gently, a high haunting sequence that mimicked the lullabies she once hummed without knowing why. Then deeper notes joined, confident, thoughtful, rising with purpose. It wasn't just music. It was memory translated into sound. People didn't cry because it was sad. They cried because it was true. When she finished, the silence held for a full beat. Then applause erupted wild, uneven, tearful. Colin stood and clapped with both hands, eyes wet, heart full. Sarah wiped her cheeks beside him. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A formal letter arrived. Notice of revoked claim. The Kessler Family Trust voluntarily withdraws any and all contestation to the Hart estate and legal guardianship of Emily Hart. No apology, no admission of wrongdoing, just surrender. Colin showed it to Sarah first. "He's backing off," she said, which means one of two things. He's been warned, or he finally knows he's lost. Either way, he's gone. He folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and didn't look at it again. That same day, Colin took Emily to the river's edge, the same spot where Lena had once stood barefoot in the mud, holding a baby in her arms, whispering promises into the water. They brought a paper lantern with her name written on it in gold ink. Emily lit the small flame inside. As it caught, the lantern swelled with heat and began to rise. She watched it drift up, past the trees, past the clouds, past the part of herself that used to be afraid. "Goodbye," she whispered, then turned back to Colin. "Ready to go?" He nodded. "Let's go home." A few weeks later, Emily received a letter in the mail. It was from the state, a certified envelope. Inside was an official document, birth certificate, Emily Lena Hart, child of Colin Hart and Lena Hart. She ran her fingers over the seal. No more questions. She placed the certificate in a glass frame and hung it on the wall beside her bed. Not as proof, as a promise. From that day forward, her days were filled with ordinary things, piano practice, homework, tea on rainy afternoons, laughing at Colin's terrible omelets, planting new seeds in the garden, and at night she wrote songs, some happy, some aching, but all of them hers. On the anniversary of the crash, Colin and Emily visited the hill where Lena's memorial stone sat. They brought wildflowers and a copy of Remembering Sky printed on parchment. Emily placed the paper on the grass and held Colin's hand. "She'd be proud of you," he said again. "No," Emily said. "She'd be proud of us." Then she added, quietly, "I'm not scared anymore." Colin squeezed her hand. "Me neither." That evening, as the sun dipped low and the crickets began their chorus, Emily stood on the back porch and sang the lullaby one last time. "Riverlight, carry me past the clouds and bitter sea, to the arms that know me still, where the world is soft and still." The wind caught the last note and carried it far across the garden. Colin listened from the doorway. He didn't need anything else, not justice, not revenge, just this sound, just this child, just this moment. Emily's story teaches us that love is not defined by wealth or circumstance. It is forged in sacrifice, courage, and the choice to keep fighting when hope feels lost. It reminds us that every child deserves to be seen, heard, and protected, no matter where they come from or what struggles they face. But it also asks us to look harder at the systems and people that allow injustice and neglect to persist. How many more families suffer in silence? How many more voices are silenced by fear, prejudice, or greed? Let this story be a call to honor those who fight for truth, to stand against discrimination, and to nurture the bonds that heal us. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more powerful, real stories into the light, stories that challenge us to be kinder, braver, and more understanding. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Stay with us for the next video, where we will dive deeper into the lives behind the headlines, sharing stories that inspire change and celebrate the human spirit. Until then, take care and keep your heart open.